So thanks for coming and talking to me, Lisa from Simply Anxious, and we've got Henry from Super, I said it on purpose, Future Proof Youth. And we're going to talk about anxiety today because I'm really interested in the way you explain it. And we were just talking then off camera about how, for me, why I'm interested in the way that you see things and the way that it's sort of like the three principles, isn't it? Sydney Banks sees things. Seems so simple to someone who, like me, has struggled for over 20 years. And like what I just said to you was 20 years ago, after a really bad experience and being told I'm not good enough, nobody will want you, over and over again, I started having anxiety attacks and panic attacks, and I didn't know what they were then. I just thought I was going crazy. I thought, this is it. This is what happens when you go mad. And then on top of that, I had a diagnosis, and the doctor said, you've got an anxiety disorder. Don't worry about it. Here's some antidepressants, and you'll have it for the rest of your life. So I left his surgery with that belief. So on top of I'm not good enough and nobody will want you, I then had a disorder which proved, well, to me then, well, I am not good enough and nobody will want me because now I've got a disorder, and I went off. And then obviously battled with anxiety on and off for over 20 years. And so I want to ask you first, if that's okay, or do you want to just explain?
Actually, I'd love to pick up on a couple of things that you mentioned, if that's okay. So the first thing was just how normal that experience that you've had is, which is to struggle with something and then go to the doctor and be labelled. And and the danger of that. And we've got a lot of mental health awareness now, which is great. And we've got a lot of, now with the internet, you know, if you're watching this, you're watching, you know, a conversation between two people on video that happened maybe even a week ago, a year ago, you know, and you're able to consume this material, you're able to consume this information. The issue with that is that there's so much information out there, and it's so readily available at the tip of our fingers, that it's really easy when you're struggling to go looking for information and maybe finding the wrong kinds of information, and then again perpetuating the beliefs or perpetuating something that might not be quite accurate. But your experience, Lisa, of that is a lot of people's experience. And yeah, it's something that breaks my heart, actually, because once you get labeled with that, although it comes with a short-term relief of, okay, now I know what's going on, it also means that you know, it becomes part of your identity almost, and it becomes something that you live with every day. And I don't believe that is helpful for long-term well-being and long-term happiness and success and contentment. So yeah, again, you know, from the point of view of the doctor and the person who diagnosed you, they're doing the best that they can, or they did the best that they could with the knowledge and the understanding that they had of what you were going through. So, you know, it's the same today. Like anyone going to the doctors, it will depend on the skill of the doctor and the understanding of the doctor and the symptoms that they're able to kind of get from you, as to, you know, what their diagnosis is and what the next steps are. And that is only really informed by the science of the day and the understanding of the day. So that's the first thing I wanted to pick up on. The second thing, so let's say for viewers, like, you know, if you've had that situation, that is so normal. It's such a normal thing. It's so common. Hopefully it's something that will become less common as understanding of mental health and understanding of the kind of the impact of those kind of labels and stuff, like the longer term impact of that is kind of looked at.
And it's great to find out, you know, that, to not a label, but it's great to find out what's been happening. But because you know so little about it, you believe everything. So I believed that I will have it for the rest of my life, and I need to take these tablets for the rest of my life. And they gave me the breathing space. I've never knocked medication because it did give me the breathing space to sort of move forward. But I took everything he said literally, and I became Lisa with anxiety. Fact.
And that's totally normal. And that's totally normal. And that's every person's experience. Because if you went to a doctor with, if you hurt your arm and went to a doctor and they said, oh, you've broken your arm, why would you think that the doctor didn't know what he was talking about? You would assume that the doctor knows that you've broken your arm, and you.
But then you've got, if I broke my arm, I've got that understanding that my arm will heal if it's in plaster. What I didn't have with anxiety back then was you can actually heal from it. I was told I will have it for the rest of my life. So I adapted my life to having that disorder.
Of course. And if you didn't know, this is the thing. So if you go to the doctor with a hurt arm and you don't know that, you know, you're saying that you know that your arm is going to heal by itself. Now, if you don't know that your arm is going to heal by itself, you carry on with normal activities and you carry on with an arm that hurts. And
like this.
Yeah, well, you wouldn't even do that. You would carry on with your hurt arm and you would just go, oh, my arm hurts now, and it's getting worse and worse and worse without realizing it, right? So if we rewound, like, I don't know, 1,000 years, that's what we would have done. But now we have the understanding, which is, okay, well, even if it's a broken arm, what do? You put it in a cast and you rest it and you don't do anything with it and it heals itself. And the thing is with most mental health issues is that we're going, no, we need to keep exercising the arm. We need to keep exercising it, and that will strengthen the arm. And then what we need to do is we need to find situations where we don't need to use this arm.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Now that's not going to help the arm to heal.
But that's exactly what I did after
Absolutely.
And now I look back and I think, wow, you know, if I did have a broken leg, I wouldn't put a 25k backpack on and start running around on it, hoping it'd get better. Yeah. But what I did with anxiety was I just overthought it. I searched, it was on my mind 24/7. So an already exhausted mind and tired mind, I was making it worse.
Absolutely. And that's again the situation that you're describing. I'm guessing if people are watching this, I would be very surprised if there aren't lots of people who resonate and who relate to that situation. I want to pick up, before we go on any further, on what you said about listening, because this is really important, actually. And we don't get taught how to listen properly. And most people, and I was one of these people for a long, long time, for most of my life, when we're listening to respond. We're listening to make sense. We're listening to understand. And what I mean by that is what you referred to earlier, which was when you're listening, but you're also, there's another voice going on of, oh yeah, does that apply to me? Oh yeah, that makes sense. Oh yeah, that's my experience. Oh, that's a mug over there. You know, you've got that narrative self, what we call the narrative self, which is processing all the information that's coming in. So what that does is the narrative self will, and the chatter will go to all of the things that it knows, right? And if you hear something, let's say you're hearing something and the narrative self or the chatter goes, and it goes against what it said, what it believes, it will throw it out. It will say, no, that doesn't tally up with my experience of the world. I'm going to throw it out. In order to learn something new, in order to see things differently, in order to have a different perspective, in order to have a different understanding of the world, we need to listen without that narrative self. We need to listen purely just for the sake of listening. Now, it doesn't mean you have to agree with what I'm saying. It doesn't mean you have to go with it. I just want you to not have an opinion about it, because that, again, is going to be just that your narrative self, or some people call the ego, is just kicking off, basically. And just let what I say in this next sort of hour or so, just let it wash over you like a shower, and just try to close your eyes and just listen to what I'm pointing to, and just try to listen with a quiet mind. And when you listen to what I'm saying with a quiet mind, then you might see something new. You might see something different, and it might be helpful. And that actually goes for every time you listen or read or listen to a loved one or have a conversation. The more quiet you are when you're listening to others, the more connected you're going to feel with them, and the more connected you're going to feel with what they're saying. But then also, what you'll find is that in that space, that's the space that we're talking about. That's the space that we're referring to. That's the space that we're pointing you always back to, which is that quiet mind, that space of peace, that space of contentment. That's the space that's always been there. That's the space that exists before an anxious mind exists. It actually exists before any mind exists, that quiet space. So you can fill that in with a happy mind, or a busy mind, or an anxious mind, or a depressed mind, or a loving mind, or a joyful mind, or an excited mind. Whatever that mind is up here, the space underneath, that quiet, that content, that's the space that's always there. That's the constant. And everything that's on the top just kind of shifts and changes and you've got different experiences and different feelings and different emotions. But the quiet and the contentment, that's what we're pointing to. That's what we're always pointing to.
And so what I want to ask,
Mm.
and I know people will too, is how do we get that when you've got an anxious mind?
If I refer to that same thing again, the anxious mind is the top layer. The anxious mind is they're the waves on the ocean. The peace and contentment is always there. It's always there. It doesn't go anywhere. So understanding that who you really are is not your thoughts. Understanding that who you really are is not your feelings. Who you really are is not even your body. Who you really are is that which exists before the body. So if you're looking for like a quick fix strategy, I mean, we were talking about this before, they don't work. They provide temporary relief at best. And the reason they don't work is because, let's take the ocean analogy, right? You can it's like trying to calm the waves of the ocean. Now, you can try whatever strategies you want to try and calm the waves of the ocean. But more waves are coming straight after it. So it's going to be some kind of temporary relief, potentially. So if you were swimming in the ocean and you were on the waves, it would be really difficult to swim when you're on the top of the waves, because the waves are coming and they're crashing. But if you decided, right, do you know what, I'm going to get some scuba diving gear and go 100 meters, I don't know scuba diving, let's say 50 meters, even 10 meters under the surface of the water with scuba diving gear, you'd find that it would be completely peaceful, and that it would be very easy to swim because you wouldn't be affected by the waves. The waves are just temporary. The waves are always temporary. The space in which the waves, the existence of the ocean is constant. So it's not about looking at strategies. It's not about looking at techniques. It's not about journaling. It's not about doing anything. That doesn't mean that I don't think that you shouldn't, if you find something which is useful, then go for it, do it. Like, if it makes sense to you to do it, if it makes sense to meditate, if it makes sense to journal, like, by all means, you can go and do those things. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't or you should do anything. But any time that you do that, what you're doing is you're looking to the outside world to solve something that's going on internally. So you're immediately looking in the wrong direction. Now, why does meditation help? Why does mindfulness help? Why that helps is it quietens the mind. It returns the mind back to its natural state. our natural state is a quiet mind. We wake up there in the morning. Where the moment that we fall asleep, we have a quiet mind. You have to have a quiet mind before you fall asleep. It's impossible to fall asleep with a mind that's racing. So we're there twice every day, at least. In the morning when we wake up, there's a first few moments that are just clear before you look at what the time is, before you figure out what you have to do today, before you go and brush your teeth or get breakfast or whatever it is your morning routine is. There's moments. Now those moments are what I'm talking about. Those moments happen a lot. And when a person is having an experience of anxiety, you forget those moments. You forget that those moments exist. But they do exist. They exist the same for every single human being.
I think a lot of people don't realize they exist.
Absolutely.
And when you have anxiety, I went through this as well. I know exactly what you mean. I'd wake up and I'd just for that split second, I'd feel, oh, and then whoosh,
yeah,
it was back.
yeah.
And it was like, when I look at it now, maybe innocently, well, I remembered I had anxiety, so I'd look for it.
Yeah, absolutely.
In a split second.
Absolutely.
And then shoot through me.
Absolutely. So anxiety is a result of over-identification with our thinking processes that are happening. So when we're babies, we're exploring the world. We're exploring our bodies, we're exploring the world around us. And what develops when we're young is the narrative self. Or some people call it the ego, some people call it the monkey mind, some people call it the separate self. And it's like a commentary. And when we're young, the commentary can be very helpful. So it helps us to explore and make sense of the world that's around us. So, for example, you might cry and then you get fed. And so what happens is that commentary, although we're not quite aware of it, it's making links, it's making associations. And it's going, I got fed when I cried. So next time I'm hungry or I have a feeling of hunger or I want some food, I'll cry. So it's kind of problem solving. So from a very, very young age, we associate very closely with this narrative self because it's really helpful to us surviving in the world, right? Now, where there becomes then a misunderstanding is where we identify that to be our self, that commentary, that self-talk, those thoughts, we identify those to be who we are. And that's not true. That's not true. Because who you are existed before that narrative self existed. And who you are exists with and without that narrative self. Sometimes it's not there. It's not there when you're sleeping, for example. So nearly a third of the day, a third of your life, it's not even there. It's really, really common. Like I used to think this as well. I used to think this, that if a thought popped up in my mind, or if a thought of a question or something to say, then I should say it. But that's not true. A question can pop up, a thought can pop up, and it can leave as quickly as it was created. So there's no need to act on thoughts. There's no need to act on feelings, because they're coming and going. They're like clouds in the sky. They're always coming and going. And if you stay still, you'll notice that they come and go. The more time you spend in that space, the more time you'll spend in peace. The more time you notice them coming and going, the easier it will be to notice them when you're really ramped up and having a tough time of things.
But not when
you're
you're
able to identify them.
Very difficult when you're already in the midst of a anxiety, an anxious mind. And obviously, for me, if I am in an anxious mind, I do like the strategy of looking at plants, just to kind of, in a sense, distract me, but it kind of brings me back to out of my head. But what I did start doing is, when my mind was calm, which it always does, I've learned that now, and it always goes back to calm. It always does. So the analogy that you described about the waves is true. I find that true. So when I have got my calm mind, I'm able to look clearly at the narrative, at the chatter, and think, wow, yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, and the reason that, like you said, sort of distracting yourself is going to help is because it brings you back to what's real. It brings you back to reality. Now, the thoughts that are going on in your head, they are not reality. They are thoughts. They are thoughts. Now, often anxiety is thinking about the future, worrying about what if, what if situations, right? And human beings have been evolving for billions of years to be where we are today. The fact that we're sitting here means that we are perfectly created to deal with the life that we have right now, the reality that we have. Physically, if you look at it from a physical point of view, we've got 4 fingers and a thumb that wraps around so that we can grab things. We evolved to walk on 2 legs. Every single piece of this physical body has been optimized to deal with the environment that we're in. And the same goes for dogs, cats, birds. Every creature on this planet, every plant on this planet is completely optimized. Now, the idea that our psychological system hasn't been optimized doesn't make sense to me. Doesn't make sense. And therefore, there isn't anything to fix. There isn't anything to fix. There's just a misunderstanding of how it works, right? So, like you said earlier, Lisa, it's like this could be a really hard pill to swallow for somebody who's really struggling with anxiety. And I understand that. Yeah. And I totally, and how many, I've had countless conversations with people. Loads of colleagues have had exactly the same thing, where you're so associated, you're so identified with this, and you're also so identified with the idea that life is hard and this is something I have to struggle and deal with. And what I'm saying is that there is hope for you. There is, it's simple. It's actually simple, and it's a misunderstanding. It's a misunderstanding of what's really going on. And if you can grasp that, if you can grasp the idea that there's nothing you have to do, that you're actually, you know, you're perfectly okay. You're perfectly okay. You've just got a bit of, you know, you're just thinking about things a lot, and you're over-identifying with your thinking. It's simple. It's okay. It happens to everyone.
I've since this understanding, I have obviously I've had moments of anxiety, and I take every opportunity to try and understand it more. And sometimes that's difficult when the anxiety's on fire. But I kind of look at us humans now, I look deeply that, as you say, we are built perfectly. And, you know, if we cut our hand, it heals itself. There's all these different things that happen. And our bodies are keeping us safe. And we kind of pile loads of toxins in. So we do things like boozing and smoking. I mean, I vape, but you know, we do all these things, and I'm really proud that I'm really grateful that my body's got me to 53, because I've had experiences of debauchery and partying, burning the candles at both ends.
Absolutely.
Living in Spain, and I don't think I slept for 5 years, and you know, all those things, and I'm still here today. So that's kind of like, I mean, I'm really grateful. People, if our bodies weren't like that, you could go to Glastonbury for a weekend, absolutely cane it and die because if the body didn't work properly.
And some people do.
I know, yeah. So I'm grateful for those things. And then I look at things like, okay, so if we're us as we're meant to be, and if we were in an environment where we're meant to be, which we're not as active as we should be, we're overloading our minds with all this information. So our mind's working anyway. You know, I look at that, oh look, there's a plant, there's the sky, there's this, I don't have to think about that. But then on top of that, you're at your computer doing this, you're reading, you're thinking of this, you're thinking what to have for tea, you're thinking about where to go on holiday, and you're just, and then so that's the environment. And then I think of things like, you know, how we kind of do it to ourselves. So our bodies are, if they were just left to be on their own, to do what we were meant to do, live off the land and have kids, and or not have kids or whatever, it would probably be okay. But we're intervening, because we are nature, but we're intervening. I know this is really deep, and I'm sorry, but this is how I feel. And I look at my puppy that and I just see her with no, you know, I'm letting her be natural, so there's no stress, and after like 3 weeks she's running around, and I just think I kind of think we can't live in an environment where we're meant to be, not meant to be, but where we're not going to damage ourselves, because we live in a really fast-paced society now. But I think if we're aware of that and we take time out to be with ourselves, maybe with meditation or walking and stuff, it really does make a big difference. And that, with my recovery, that's what's made a difference to me. Not trying to paper over the cracks and carry on regardless, making myself have those back to nature times. where I just sit under a tree, or I just, I'm not very good at meditation, but I'll sit and just not think, or think, because you can't stop thinking. So,
Can't you?
well, your thoughts will still come.
Mm.
So I'm kind of seeing that as well, that what it goes back to is, when I first had anxiety, if I knew what I know now, it wouldn't have lasted as long as it did. But then I found myself in a position where I believed something for 20 years.
Mm.
It's not just a case of understanding what you guys say or what Sid Banks says and it's gone like that. For me, no, because I had this belief for over 20 years. Layer by layer, it's coming off. I see that.
Well,
but you told me that people can get it like that.
yeah. Well, I mean, the thing is, right, is that we're always going to have the ups and downs of life, okay? And we're not in control of our thinking. This is a misunderstanding. Thinking is happening. Thinking is being experienced. We're not in control of it. We can't control it. So when I say, when I say to quieten the mind, I'm pointing you to something here, which, there's nothing you have to do to quieten the mind, like there's no like techniques. It's a little bit of an oxymoron in a way, and it's a little bit messy, but yeah, like layers. If you can start to strip away the layers of conditioning, what you just basically alluded to, Lisa, is we live in society that we live in, and what happens is that we get layers upon layers of conditioning depending on where we're growing up, our parents, our friends, like what is important in life, and da 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 da. And that conditioning is a big part of our experience. And as you start to strip layer upon layer away, you get back to your true self of who you are. It takes a moment to strip all of that away and be in the present moment. When you're experiencing the present moment, being with your dog, Lisa, there is no conditioning.
No.
So all of that is a myth. It's all an idea.
But it's hard to keep that consistent.
No, it's not hard. No. Enjoy the time with your dog. The best teacher you'll ever have is a pet or a small child who will live in the present moment, moment to moment, going from one moment to the next moment, and dealing with the stimulus that is readily available to them in the real world. Right? What happens is as soon as we start to put in ideas that we have to deal with, we're starting to deal with stuff that isn't actually happening in the real world. It's not happening around us, right? So what I'm going to suggest to you, Lisa, is that all of that conditioning, it does disappear. It disappears a lot. It doesn't.
No, but what I'm saying is, one day you can feel, like you said, I can be walking the dog, feel amazing, feel great. And then another day, I think, speaking on behalf of all of people who suffer with anxiety, on another day, you can just feel like you can't even leave your house. Same person, the only difference I can see is what I'm thinking. So on one day, I'm thinking I've got a calm mind, and I'm just enjoying being. There are times as well that I can be in that mindset or that mind frame and just enjoying life. But in the back of my mind always is, I wonder if it's going to come back. When's it going to
Yes.
come back? Or I can have a fantastic time. I can go years, months, and then all of a sudden it can just come back.
Mm.
And that's what I mean by, I'm realizing now that years of, I just want rid of it. I want it to
Mm.
go. I don't want it anymore. I've had enough. Life isn't like that. So I believe that anxiety, everyone's got anxiety because it's a fight or flight. You know, you may not agree. It's in us and it'll happen. So you will experience it when you need to. And getting comfortable with that is fine and will help. But when it's hitting you on and off, on and off,
So what's hitting
what's the
you?
key?
What's hitting you?
So, and I think it's the pattern in the
What's,
condition.
when you say hitting you, Lisa, what do you mean by that? What's
So, for
hitting you?
example, I used, you know, I'd be fine, everything would be great, I'd be having a great day, and then someone would say, why don't we go so and so tomorrow?
Mm.
And then I can see it clearly. I'd start thinking, oh, God, what if I go there and it's
So what's hitting you?
then the anxiety would start.
What's hitting you?
My thoughts.
How can a thought hit you?
Will affect me then, affect how I'm
So
feeling.
this
I'm
is
just
where,
going back to when it used to try and get.
no, I totally
I
understand. I
there's no
totally
quick fix
understand.
and stuff, but I just,
Well,
you know,
there
because
is. This
we
is the
find
thing.
we find ourselves in this. God, it's been great. You know, it's been 2 years. I haven't had any anxiety. It's been fantastic. Da 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 da. Bang,
Mm.
comes back.
So,
What I just want to know what you think about that.
so I mean, first thing I would say is that you said like everybody has anxiety. So I would say that I would disagree with that. I would say that nobody has anxiety.
Well,
Even people who think they have anxiety don't have anxiety, because anxiety is not a real thing. It's an imagined thing. It's an idea. It's a concept. It's not something that you can have. It's just somebody put a label on a bunch of symptoms. Okay, so when you start to deconstruct what anxiety is, right, from a you know, and when I talk about this, I'm talking about it from from a point of view that is what anxiety is. It's a word to describe symptoms. That's all it is, right? Now, if you get symptom 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, guess what? Here you go. There's an anxiety label. It's not actually a thing that you can have. All it is a description. It's a word to describe a bunch of symptoms, right? So I would say nobody has anxiety. I would say people might exhibit anxious symptoms. In terms of
experience.
what you were referring to was the stress response, right?
Yeah.
So the stress response occurs when real danger is imminent. The stress response occurs.
Ideal
Yeah.
world, but in an anxious mind.
No, in the real world. In the real world. So anxiety is a fear of an imagined danger, not a real danger, right? That's where the distinction is. Okay.
Absolutely.
So that's where anxiety, and again, this is just kind of, the more you kind of deconstruct this, it's like demystifying it. Like, anxiety isn't a fear of a real thing, it's a fear of an imagined thing. It's like, but fear, real fear, creates that stress response. So now what happens is the mind, again, the ego or the narrative self, gets so caught up because it believes that it's the imagination is real. It has the same physiological response as it would do to a real, you know, if a tiger walked into my room right now, I would have a stress response. My heart would start palpitating, you know, my blood vessels would, you know, everything would go, right? All of the chemicals in my body. I'd be out the window. I'd be out the window, right? But this is the thing, is I'd jump out the window and probably cut myself, not even feel it. The adrenaline would be going, right? Now, what's happening when you're talking about anxiety hitting you, right? You're still describing it as a real thing.
Yeah.
Right. And I didn't want the intention of this call wasn't to turn it into a coaching call, right? But it's almost like that, right?
I want to help as much
Yeah. But
as
it's
possible. So I want to bring all these different
yeah,
ways of looking at anxiety, because after 20 years of doing it
absolutely.
the way, it doesn't, it was looking at it this way, maybe not as deeply as you've put it, but I started getting.
Yeah. It's going to help. It's going to help. Because as you're saying that it's hitting, I can still sense inside you
Yeah.
that it's a real thing, you know, it's a real thing.
I think what it is now is, yeah, I'm fine and blah, blah, blah. You still have it in the back of your mind. Will it come back?
So
because it's so awful.
yeah.
It really is. That you don't want it.
Absolutely. So I'll draw the picture that I drew before, right? Which is when it hits you, and this is I want to just keep with this kind of theme here.
Okay.
Because
we'll have another call another day, by the way.
No, we've got time. So yeah, you can see that, right? Oh, you can see the other side of it as well, but never mind. If I put that, no, that makes it worse. Okay. So you see the narrative self there, ego.
Yeah.
So anxiety lives within the over-identification with the narrative self or the ego. Yeah. But the narrative self is only a part of who you are. It's not who you are. Who you are is the whole piece of paper. And when you know that you're the whole piece of paper, you're able to go on walks and enjoy nature, or even get consumed in your work because you're not worried. Yeah. Well, because you're not concerned with the idea of Lisa. And I'm not concerned with the idea of Henry because I'm busy, right? As soon as we start to get concerned with the idea of Lisa, all sorts of things can happen, right? All sorts of feelings, all sorts of thinking can come up. But as soon as you start to go, oh yeah, now I need to realize that that's an idea as well. That's an idea as well. That's a concept. Because most of the day, actually, you're just pottering about, doing your thing, And if you look at Luna,
she's got something in her mouth and I'm worried what it is.
But if you look at Luna's Lisa's little puppy, she's just going to be going, you know, she doesn't have that narrative self.
No.
So she's just going along, yeah, I'm going to chew that, I'm going to eat that. Oh, what's that? I'm going to eat that. You're not worried about what it is. I'm just going to eat it and see what happens. And even if it's horrible, right?
It's hedgehog poo. Can I just get it off her, please?
Yeah, absolutely. That makes sense. How do you know it's hedgehog?
Because we have hedgehogs. we have hedgehogs in the evening, and they leave little poos.
Oh, okay. Well, okay, so let's use that as an example, right? So Luna either will or will not continue to eat hedgehog poo, right? But she's going to learn that, and she's going to figure it out herself. But the only way she can learn it is by tasting it.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with anything in life. And with anxiety, there's a what if this happens? What if that happens? Oh, what happens if I go to the party and nobody likes me? Blah, blah, blah. Listen, go and try it out.
Yeah.
And if it happens, I'm going to tell you, you've got everything you need to deal with that situation, whether that is to go and start speaking to somebody, to go and grab a drink, to leave the party, whatever it is, like you'll have the solution. But
Yeah.
you won't have the solution until you get there. Now, if you imagine the solution, the solution is always don't go. That's the easy solution. And that's what the narrative self, that's what the ego would like to do. It would just go, no, I just want to make sure that I'm self-serving myself and keeping myself safe. I don't want to get embarrassed. I don't want to feel uncomfortable. But the only way of really knowing is to try things out in the real world, okay? And then something to add into there, because I don't want this to get misunderstood, is, oh, but I went to a party before and I felt terrible. Or I did that in the past and it didn't work out. Well, guess what? The past is the past, it's gone. There is no experience that you're ever going to have that's going to be the same as an experience that you've had in the past. So we often use the past experience to predict the outcome of future experiences. Now, past experiences are very bad at predicting future experience. And the reason that is because when you get to that experience, well, first of all, you've analyzed the past experience with hindsight, 2020 hindsight. But then also that future experience, you have the capacity for imagination, creativity in the moment. The solutions are going to come to you. You're connected to creativity, to imagination. And you're going to make a decision which is the best thing in that moment and the best thing that you can do. And that's not because, I'm not saying that because we're doing a talk on anxiety. I'm doing that.
No.
I'm saying that because that's true for every single human being that
thinking
lives.
Of you. I'm thinking of you as a sports psychologist, and you take an athlete, how many times they haven't won, how many times they might have fallen over, and if they went forward thinking of their past, they would never get that gold medal.
Absolutely.
And it's like, I would enter, for example, relationships, and someone said this to me once, and I saw it as clear as day. So I go into a new relationship, but I wasn't, they were totally different, they looked different, but I was looking at them and seeing this relationship through my past relationships.
Yeah.
And once I identified that, I started noticing it in everything I did. So that was a real boom aha moment, and it's very useful.
Absolutely. And it's a really natural thing to do. It's a really normal thing to do, it's kind of like you had past experience glasses on, right? So it was like, right, every time I look at something, I'm going to compare it to my past experience and then make a decision based on my past experience. Now, if you realize that you're wearing glasses, you can take the glasses off and see the world fresh, moment to moment as it is in front of you, and make a decision based on. And that doesn't mean that it could be good, it could be bad, it could be whatever. But that's what we're here for. We're here for the experience. It's not
Yeah.
about having a good experience of life all the time, because bad stuff happens and we can't avoid it.
No.
And it's not, life is the good and the bad and the ugly. It's all of it. And we're here. It's not an accident that you're watching this video. It's not an accident that we're here. We're the result of billions of years of evolution. And that's a special thing to remember.
Yeah.
It's a really special thing to remember. I really love that example of the sports person, you know, because if you think about, I mean, football is sort of my main sport, and you play against the same teams every year and you play in the same stadiums.
Yeah.
So, and every game is always different. Every game is always different. So you cannot let that past experience dictate your future experience.
Yeah. I think for me, the whole thing about thought really is what resonated with me, because I realized that, you know, okay, I've been through a really awful experience, and yes, it was awful, but I brought it with me
Mm.
because in my thoughts,
Mm.
and it's really hard not to, because you hate admitting like I'm a victim, but of whatever. But I can see it so clearly now. That happened. It was awful,
Mm.
but I survived it, and
Mm.
it and that's where you can prolong your suffering
Yes, absolutely.
unnecessarily.
Yeah. So, I mean, the way I would say that, I think what you're referring to there is like contaminating the present moment with
Yeah,
the past,
yeah,
right? So when you're,
innocently, by the way.
absolutely, and I've totally been there, and it happens automatically. And again, I want
Yeah,
just to remind people watching this that they're not doing it on purpose. It's not something that, you know, we can actually, you know, we can't control our thinking. What's happening here is we're navigating the world that we have with the understanding that we have about how it works. So if it makes, what happens as human beings is we create a map of the world, and we use that map of the world to navigate our way through life. Now, when we're really young, we're constantly writing new maps because we're learning new things. So we're constantly, like Luna will be doing the same thing. She's got this new place that she's come to. So she's trying to figure it all out. And she's, in her mind, she's creating a map of the world. So for example, okay, this is a really good example. If you took a puppy and put them in a bedroom, and you had a 5-bedroom house, like a huge house, the puppy would create a map of that one room. Yeah. And this is how we work as human beings. We create a map of that one room. So we create a map of, when I was 2 years old, I created a map of my 2-year-old world. As then we open the door to another room and we go, right, there's another room here. So I need to either add to the map that I've got or create a new map, which includes that one. As we go through life, we're constantly adding to our map. We're expanding our map of what we know about the world, which helps us to navigate the world. Now, our map is pretty good because it's got us to the point that we're at. Yeah.
yeah,
However, in order for us to learn and understand more and continue to add to that map, we have to be open to the idea that some of the things on our map might not be 100% correct. There might be bits of our map that we need to rip off and start again. And actually, I mean, this is just a metaphor. It's not, you know, I don't believe this to be true. It's just a belief that we have this map, right? So in reality, what we're doing is we're creating a map every moment. That's the reality of it. And every moment is another moment to change the map, to have a new map, to have a different map.
Although we're creating a new map, aren't we filling it with past experiences? Like I have been.
To a certain degree, yes. To a certain degree, yes. But equally, the importance that you place on the past experience will determine how much of that past experience comes into your map. So right. for me, I place absolutely zero importance now on experiences that I've had. But that doesn't mean that I'm not the result of all of the conditioning and the experiences that I've had over that time, right? They're not conscious in my mind when I'm making decisions, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think there's a grain of, yeah, I can't disagree with you entirely, but equally, like, the more importance you put on those past experiences, the more clear they're gonna be on your map, if that makes any sense. I don't know if that makes any sense, but and also if you believe, for example, that your past experiences totally have created who you are, and you're attached to them, then yeah, that's gonna be a big part of your map.
Yeah. Yeah.
But what I'm saying is that actually, if in reality, what's happening is a map is being created now in this very moment, based on everything we know about the world. And past experiences, actually, they're not actually that much in it, to be honest, because they're, you know, they don't exist anymore. They're an idea. They're a concept. The only time that exists is now. The only thing that exists.
Well, thank you.
We didn't get through any of your questions, but that's okay.
Yeah, we're going to wrap up soon. But yeah. How do you feel that this understanding helps people who are suffering with anxiety?
It's hard for me to say. It's hard for me to answer that question because I've never really experienced anxiety as what most people would call it. How it's helped me, I can talk about how it's helped me, or how I think that it's helped me.
Yeah.
Is I've certainly stopped identifying with thoughts and feelings that I'm having. And for me, that's been a huge help. And I've also, what's helped, I think, is stripping away layers of conditioning and ideas and concepts and beliefs around the world and around life that I thought were real, but actually they're just ideas, they're concepts, they're beliefs, and they're open to change at any moment. So that's what it's helped me with. So even the idea that anxiety is just an idea. The idea that anxiety is an idea. If you can grasp that without the ego kicking back, which it will inevitably kick back, because it will say, no, it's real, then yeah, there's yeah, that I found just getting to the truth of matters much quite helpful. Yeah, quite helpful.
And I know you said that those things have helped you, and how, in what way have they helped you? What's changed about your sort of struggles then, if you like? It's just
Yeah, it's
want to get it.
interesting. Yeah, I mean, I guess nothing's really changed.
It's made you
But
calm.
yeah, but I mean, I've always been quite a calm person and quite a laid back person. But I would say that it's just my mind has just stopped really bothering about too many things, which gives me
That's
a
awesome.
yeah, well, it gives me a little bit more space just to enjoy what's happening right now. So you mentioned earlier about going into nature and stuff, and that's wicked, right? But what I enjoy is not only going into nature, but having like a conversation like this, going to the supermarket, you know, everyday stuff is beautiful. It's more, it's allowed me to enjoy everything. And nature is beautiful, don't get me wrong, but then it's also something which is actually really interesting is that work doesn't really feel like work. It's just the time that I choose to spend doing what I'm doing as a human being on this earth, you know?
Yeah.
There's no there's no alternative. There's no separation between my time doing one thing and my time doing something else, you know?
Yeah. Ow, sorry. Luna's nipping my feet. Stop it. It sounds great, and I hope it's been helpful to people who are listening. If they want to get in touch with you, this is going to go on the website, so
Cool.
I'll put your email on there. If they
Yeah,
want to go more in depth.
absolutely. So email is info@henrysaha.com, but we can put it in the
Yeah.
we can put it in the post as well, right? And then I'll put it on my website as well, if that's okay.
Yeah,
And we can
right.
stick it on there, and we'll pop your details in there as well.
Brilliant. All right. Well,
Amazing.
thanks ever so much, Henry. It's been really interesting.
Thank you.
Take care.
See you later.